The Hawk That Dare Not Hunt by Day by Scott Odell, Chapter 33. Phillips was late coming aboard, but we still made the tide and arrived off Gravesend in time to catch a strong prevailing wind under a fair sky and make a good heading across the Bay of Biscayne. We had fine sailing until off the southern coast of Portugal we encountered heavy seas. Everyone in the crew had a touch of seasickness, but Phillips came down with it hard. I must say, however, that he bore it with a fortitude I didn't expect from him. Our plans to sail directly to Seville were thwarted at the mouth of the Guadalquivir, where rains had blocked the entrance with shifting silt. After a day of struggling to get the heavy-laden ship through the entrance, we gave up and sailed to Cadiz, further to the south. Phillips set off from Cadiz on horseback for Seville, and we took a straight course for the Ionian Sea. We had picked up a knowledgeable pilot in Cadiz and made Venice as smoothly as if we were sailing on an English lake. Our wool bought a good price, and we bought Venetian glass and silk with the profits, sailing south again after a short week in this most beautiful of cities, feeling quite proud of ourselves, both as merchant and seaman. The Guadalquivir was open when we arrived, and we negotiated the winding river without mishap, though with the help of a Spanish seaman whom we hired from one of the ships lying at anchor in the river entrance. Our Spaniard's name was Juan de Palos. He had, so he said, been born in Palos, and sailed from there with Columbus and had been in prison with him as well. I deeply appreciated Juan de Palos. He looked like a Spanish brigand, or like my idea of a brigand, with wild eyes and one cropped ear and a gold ring in the other. But he was a good and grizzled pilot. We had not been in Seville an hour before he was proposing that we outfit the Black Pearl for a voyage to the New World. I had dreamed many times of sailing off to the Indies, the tales of gold and green continents and pink coral beaches, and great cities in the jungle where no one lived, islands where there were no men, only fair-haired women, taller than a tall man. All these I dreamed of on idle watches at sea. But, Señor, there is one condition, Juan said in his soft civilian accent. I am the pilot. The license must be written in my name. You are English, see, and therefore cannot become a pilot in a country that belongs to Spain. I hired him on the spot, gave him some gold and a shove towards the entrance of La Casa de Contratación, which was next door to the Alcázar. It was there I was to meet Henry Phillips. Go, I said, and become a pilot licensed to sail in the waters of the New World. We'll sail together. Maybe. He did so and joined us the next day. Then, as planned, I met Phillips in the Alcázar, not that day, but the next, less than 2 months from the afternoon when we had parted at Cadiz. He had grown a sweeping Spanish mustache with waxed turned-up tips and wore a short sword in a Cordovan sheath at his side. What he had done meanwhile, he did not say, nor did he have anything in the way of merchandise to show. Truth was, Henry Phillips didn't consider himself a merchant. It was an occupation beneath his dignity as a gentleman. To buy and sell goods, to go into the fields and warehouses and haggle over prices was something he would disdain. But I was certain that he had not been idle since I had seen him last. Charles V, Emperor of the Holy Roman Empire, was the most powerful ruler on earth, and he was now in Seville. It was most likely that Phillips had come to Seville for the one purpose of seeking an audience with him. The emperor had heard of Tyndale, despised him, and could play an important part in any plot against him. What was more logical, therefore, than the two should meet to discuss the English heretic? We left Seville with half a cargo, fortunately none of it subject to spoilage. for off Portugal, our balky tiller jumped its gudgeons, and we had to put in at Lisbon for repairs, which took 8 days. Then, upon entering the Bay of Biscayne, Phillips came down with a mysterious sickness, which he had apparently contracted in Lisbon. It was my advice that we head straight for England, but he was unswerving in his demand that we stop at Antwerp, where he said he would receive better treatment than in London. Against my judgment, I humored him in this, and though we could have made faster time by sailing a more westerly course, I piled on all canvas and made for Antwerp. After a day on this new course, he seemed to worsen, and in the evening asked Grote if we had a Bible on the ship. Grote asked me, and I pondered the wisdom of letting Phillips have one of my 2 copies of Tyndale's New Testament, the only version of the Bible we had on board. At last, with misgivings, I took to his cabin the one that did not have Tyndale's inscription to me. He was too sick, or he claimed to be, too sick to read, so I read him several passages out of Matthew. One passage he asked me to read twice. It was such: "Come unto me, all ye that labor and are heavy laden, and I will ease you. Take my yoke on you, and learn of me, for I am meek and lowly in heart, and ye shall find rest unto your souls. For my yoke is easy, and my burden is light." He didn't respond to the readings, lying with his face half covered, uttering no sound or comment. And soon I realized that I was reading to a man who had fallen asleep. I left the Bible on the table beside his bed in case he wished to read when he woke up. Ed Grote greeted me outside the cabin. "I think Phillips is done for. Not the plague, thanks to the Lord, but something bad." I agreed that Phillips' chances looked poor. "Get out the coffin that you made for me. We'll give him a decent burial, though I don't know exactly why we should," I said. "Neither do I," said Grout, "but I'll make a new lid. I'll keep the one with the angel that I carved for you. A plain lid is more suitable for him somehow." The next day, however, Phillips was improved so much that I again suggested that we alter course and head up for London, but he still insisted upon sailing to Antwerp. He was quite well when we reached there, and disappeared as soon as the ship docked. I watched him swing jauntily along the dock toward town. I had the awful conviction that at last he was on Tyndale's trail, at last armed with papers and wits and all the paraphernalia that he would need. He was on his way to find and arrest Tyndale in the name of Charles V. That night, when I went to get Tyndale's Bible from the shelf above my bunk, I discovered that it was missing. I remembered then that I had not put it back when I finished reading it to Phillips. I searched the cabin. The disturbing thought struck me that Phillips had taken it along with him when he left the ship that afternoon. End of chapter 33.